Support for Soccer Today is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the Ultimate Man's Hygiene Bundle, the Performance Package. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com.
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane Rollins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for Monday, June 20th. 2022. I'm Kev Laramie and I'll be joined by Duane Rollins in a second as we invite you to join us in the journey to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Click that notification bell and be part of the amazing crew that gets notified whenever we upload a brand new show on our Soccer Today YouTube page. Duane, big show for everybody today as we break down almost every single game this weekend in Major League Soccer, particularly the three Canadian teams involved. We'll break down tactically, statistically, analysis, the eye test, and heck, we'll even talk about fashion because we had some great kits this weekend too. But first, how are you today?
Doing pretty well. Just before I came on air, I was browsing through, looking at Junior Hollett rumors. He's being linked to TFC. I'm not sure how much stock I put in that yet, but from that, I got looped into my first sighting of a rare tweet. Well, actually, I think it'll become less rare. A European who has never watched Canada play before saying Canada is overrated. Despite the fact, or because of the fact that hipsters are saying that they are the dark horse, you know, that sort of reverse twist when it kind of twists around. First one I've seen. So it's another sign that we've made it, I think, that we're now overrated because we're over the under than over than under over something. I don't know. It's all confusing.
I've also heard like Canada's overrated and, you know, they've only had a league now for a few years. It's a new sport still in Canada. They don't even play outside most of the year. Like, do these people ever watch Canadian soccer? I don't think so.
Look, I think that we can listen to Solitudes. We're going to have one, I think, probably soon this week. But you can listen to us there in more detail. But, the idea we're going to blast through that group is silly. But nonetheless, I think that if you're basing Canada's ability to play at the 2022 World Cup and the fact that we've only had the KPL since 2019, it might kind of be missing the point. We're talking about two different topics in that particular situation.
Yeah, but today, it is Monday. It's our weekend review in Major League Soccer. Week 15, 14 games took place this weekend. Here's the overview of scores. And Duane, we had a couple of interesting scores, a lot of 1-1 and a lot of, I have to say, kind of like regular games. But Seattle LAFC 1-1, LA Galaxy Portland 1-1. We had Columbus Charlotte 1-1, Philly Cincinnati 1-1, NYC Colorado 1-1. It's the weekend of the 1-1. We quickly mentioned Columbus Charlotte, and I want to say congratulations to Mohamed Farsi, formerly of AS Blainville in the PLSQ, Cavalry FC in the Canadian Premier League, also played in the Premier League de Futsal du Québec in the Montreal regions over the year. Mohamed Farsi made his debut in Major League Soccer after signing a short-term contract with the Columbus Crew. He is a player of Columbus Crew 2 in MLS Next Pro. He made his debut this weekend in a short-term loan, wishing him all the best in Major League Soccer. In the 1-1 draw versus Charlotte for Columbus, we'll break down a lot of those results. But Duane, when I look at this weekend of games, I have to say, San Jose losing on the road, I guess things are back to normal in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, it was the week of the draw, as you mentioned. Also, some really bad keeping this weekend, other than Steph Fry. We're going to talk about that game later, but other than Fry, who often can stand on his head in games, it was really some skeptical. Let's go with skeptical keeping this year. It was a bad week for the goalies. Well, but nonetheless, look, we're slap dab in the dog days now for sure. There's a lot of kind of getting through the day sort of games this weekend.
We're almost halfway of the season. And Duane is wearing his Toronto shirt, so we'll start with Toronto this weekend for Monday, and we're reviewing today New York Red Bull versus TFC. It took place Saturday at Red Bull Arena in Harrison, New Jersey, of course. Big win for the Red Bulls. Their second only win this season at home. That's surprising because they're having a good season. They're second in the Eastern Conference. We'll look at that later. Lewis Morgan scored at the 2nd minute. Luquinha scored at the 56th minute. And if we look at Major League Soccer record in their last 8 games for Toronto FC, it is 1 win, 6 losses, and 1 draw over the last 8 games. If we look at the numbers here, 14 shots, 4 on target for the Red Bulls. Possession, not a lot, but that's the Red Bulls' motto this year. It's we don't want the ball. You keep the ball. You play with it. And still they were able to score 2 goals. 1.7 in the expected goals. Look at the crosses, and that's my theme today. My statistical theme, Duane, is crosses, because a lot of disparities across all games we're covering today. In the crosses department, the winning team has had the upper hand in every single game of the 6 we're going to break down today. And I don't think it's a coincidence. The best way to open up the middle is to use the flanks. And we're in that evolution of the tactical ability. From the 3-4-3 that's been really popular for the last year, it's shifting back to a 4-4-2. We'll talk about that. But TFC, a big defeat, 2-0 on the road.
That wasn't a big defeat. I mean, it was a typical game of TFC this year. Yeah, I mean, they played fine by and large. They just critical errors. They have critical errors. It's a young team. There's young parts to the team. I know you'll point out that the overall age is not really young, but some of their key components are young.
They're very young. We can look at the lineup in a few minutes. A lot of names that if you're not a follower on the day-to-day operations that you've never seen before.
Well, and there was decisions made with Wednesday in mind. If you don't know what Wednesday is, it's the semifinal of the Canadian Championship. So that's for sure. There was some rotation there, and that tells you a little bit where they see this team this year. Insigne is coming in on Friday. There's an event. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this out loud, but I just did. There's an event on Friday in town to welcome him here amongst the supporters. So that's what they're looking to. We've been talking about this for a while. But look, TFC's issue this year is they have defensive breakdowns at opportune moments, and they allow goals quickly and badly and in bad situations. They allow a goal a minute and 50 seconds into the game. You're chasing it from that point, right? Like, it's not ideal.
And again, against a team like New York that do a very high press and it's hard to play against, if you're chasing from the 2nd minute, it's a long day.
Yeah, and look, I want to pull a stat out. I want to make something clear before I do this. I want to talk about Jonathan Rozera for a second, who I think has been TFC's most important player this year for a lot of reasons. Now, unfortunately, he's also been missing for 6 games this year. Now, again, TFC's not a great team, even with him in the lineup, but they are a truly terrible team without him in the lineup. 6 games Jonathan Rozera has not played for TFC this year. Their record is 1-4-1. They average 0.83 goals per game. That's bad. That's wooden spoon stuff. When he has played, 8 games, 2-4-2. Still not great. That's 1 point per game. That's outside of a playoff pace, but they average 1.62 goals per game. That's a Serio in or Serio out is a difference of it's doubles, twice as many goals scored per game. You score 1.6 goals per game in MLS and you work that defensive issues out, you're going to win games. You're going to be competitive, particularly at home. So, look, they've got to stay healthy, and it underlines how perfect they have to be to win this year. When Insigne comes in, I don't think it's going to solve everything. They need to find other holes in this team, but it's certainly going to help, and we'll see. We said before the season started when it came to TFC that we needed to wait. We needed them to be within touching distance of the playoffs when Insigne showed up to have a chance at the playoffs, and we never thought they were ever going to get above that. Are they outside of that right now? That's debatable. I don't think they're not completely dead. Like, you can't make an argument that they're not, but they are not as close as maybe you might like. That's what I'd say there. But let's wait and see another month, and then we can decide where we're truly at.
They're not in reach with 1 or 2 games, but if you go on a real run and there's a few positive results, maybe then you can say that you go on a run and you have an opportunity to make the playoffs. Let's look at Toronto's lineup from this game, because I think it's very interesting. And that made you probably very happy. Conte Westberg in net, number 16. Look at the defense. Lucas Petrasso, Carlos Acedo, O'Neill, and Thompson. A lot of young players. 3 out of 4 were young in this one. When we're looking at the midfield, Nelson, Pozuelo, Bradley, and Kerr. Yes, 2 youngins and 2 veterans. And up top, next to Jesus, you had Ayo Akinola. So Jesus and Ayo together for not necessarily a great production, but they did have more expected goals than they should have scored one, if not two, if we're looking at the pure stats, is what I'm saying. When you're looking at this starting lineup and the big differences, it's either experienced players or very young players. What would you do differently, if anything, when you look at this 4-4-2? How should fans of Toronto FC view this?
Well, the problem with TFC is that they have no midfield of sorts right now. And there is a conversation to be had about Michael Bradley. I don't think Bradley's the problem. I never will. But I don't think he's the solution this year either. And what we're going to need to do is to see what happens when Insigne comes in, as I mentioned before, when Rozera gets healthy, and then you figure out what you do with Pozuelo. And they kind of have another choice they have to make out here. What happens with Pozuelo? And this is a conversation that's happening in Toronto right now. He's a great player. He's been a great player for TFC. He won the MVP for them. He took them to a final. There's no doubt that Pozuelo's legacy with TFC is solid, but whether or not the future lies with him or whether he would be better off moving somewhere where he is the key cog again would be the question we'd ask. Look, there's not much you can do here right now with the lineup that they have. I do think that focusing on Wednesday makes some sense because, in particular, if they win the game on Wednesday, which is a home game, it's not impossible that they beat Montreal in that game. One off, who knows? Right? It's not a miracle if it doesn't happen. Then you have a chance to win a final, and you can sort of build towards that CCL, and you don't have that pressure's off you if you win that tournament. And it's 2 wins, so it makes sense to doing that. So I don't necessarily disagree with the lineup choices here, but look, they've got to get some help out there for those younger players. There are too many of them on the pitch at the same time. For this team to be successful. Jade Nelson, for instance, I love Jade Nelson's game. I think he's got a big ceiling in this game, but defensively, he is a problem out there. Look at the first goal. It's his man. He loses Morgan. Morgan takes 2 steps back. He just physically, Nelson can't keep up with the men right now. It's a boy against a man, quite literally, and he's being exposed. And I don't think he's been overplayed out of necessity. So you have to sort of get healthy, and you have to sort of help these kids along a little bit more. It's one thing to throw them into the fire and see what happens, and that's great to a point, but at some point you have to give them a bit of a break to let them decompress and understand and learn from what they've experienced in the first half of the year.
Yeah, and of course we'll talk about Toronto later also when we look at our standings in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference a bit later on. Let's now stay in the Eastern Conference but move to Montreal because this weekend Montreal hosted Austin for the first time ever at Stade Saputo. It did not go according to plan. Montreal wasn't able to get the best of Austin. Maxi Urruti, former Montreal player, of course, came back to haunt his former team, scoring the only goal in this one, even though Austin was down a man. The Texas team was down to 10 players only after Pereira got his second yellow card at the 44th minute and was sent off. Montreal, it's their 3rd loss in the last 4 games in Major League Soccer. 11 shots, only 2 on target for Montreal, 5 and 2 for Austin. 62.5% possession in the loss for Montreal. They got a very high 86% passing accuracy and 15 crosses versus 6. Montreal using the flanks tried to find the head of Kai Kamara to get the ball behind the net, but weren't able to. They had a couple of opportunities. Kamara had a point-blank save. Really, really big disappointment. It would have been his 134th goal in his career, and he would have been tied with Jeff Cunningham in the 3rd all-time for MLS goals scored. But now it's not the case. Montreal has its 3rd defeat in 4 games, like I was saying. But Montreal did have to manage without a few of their best players, Duane. Without Mihailovic, which is a big deal, without Kamal Miller and Alistair Johnston on the starting 11, 2 of the best defenders Canada has ever produced, I have to say, were missing for Montreal. And you saw Zachary Broguillard start at the right back, while at the right midfield, Mathieu Chouanière on the left side, Samuel Piet-Victor Wanyama, Kai Kamara as the striker with Matko Miljevic and Joaquin Torres as his attacking midfielder up top in a 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1 against Austin. And I have to say, looking at the very tight schedule with the injuries Montreal has, this was a game that could have gone either way. Montreal did get opportunities. They did get very similar expected goals too. And Kai Kamara, point blank save, by Brad Stuver, former Montreal Impact draftee. This was a bit disappointing for Montreal, Duane, but also this was maybe luck turning around. Montreal were lucky a few times this season. This one, they weren't as lucky, but at the end of the day, it does even itself out, and I think Montreal maybe deserved the point, but I can live with one loss, even though it's 3 out of 4, if they can turn things around in the next few games. Charlotte is next in MLS, but they do have Toronto Wednesday in Toronto in the Canadian Championship.
Look, and what I just said about Toronto is probably also applies for Montreal too. I mean, they're 2 wins away from a trophy, and the CCL is very important to that club. So some of those players that are injured might have been, if this was an absolute desperate must-win game, might have been available, right? You make choices, and you have to live with that. I think, Kevin, you have viewed Montreal a little higher than I do. I view them kind of as a 8, 7, 6, 5 team in the East. You might view them a little higher. So I think this is more them finding their level from what was a hot start. I don't know offhand, I'm putting you on a spot here a little bit. Do you know how often they've underperformed their XG in the last few games, or is that a consistent thing?
They have underperformed their SG twice in the last 4 games off the top of my head, so technically they actually played better than the results they got, which is what I would say from the last few games.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about this at the start of the year that Montreal really needed to find a consistent goal-scoring threat, and Georgie came in and has, from a midfield position, has sort of created the offense that has driven that. When he's out of that lineup, it's a different team. They're borderline playoff team without him, right? I think that's fair. But you take the best team player off any team, they're going to drop, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you take Driussi out of Austin, they're not beating Montreal. And Montreal was missing 3 full-fledged starter, if not 4, including the new midfield that we've seen this year with Victor Wanyama and his new teammates. So a few players that were not available that were usually very useful for Montreal. But Montreal did not get a victory. They slide down to the 5th spot in the standings, and we'll look at the standings after the break. Before we take the break, we'll switch to Vancouver. We'll break down the only Canadian team with a victory this weekend. Big win for Vancouver. Lucas Cavallini on fire. Yes, Lucas Cavallini showing up on a contract year once again. Timing is great. Lucas, go to the bank. The tank to the bank. 4 straight goals in 4 MLS games for Lucas Cavallini. Lucas Cavallini gave a victory for Vancouver. 2nd loss in 1 month against Vancouver for FC Dallas. For some reason, why Vancouver has a number of Dallas this season. Styles make fights, but look at these numbers. This ain't sustainable. This ain't sustainable in the long term. But you can take the victory when you get them. 16 shots for Dallas, only 1 on target, 67.1% possession for Dallas, 33 crosses. And it's not written here, but they have an over 27% chance, crosses, successful crosses. So a very high amount of crosses to the box and a 1 XG. And look at these numbers, 32.9% possession for Vancouver, 0.5 XG, only 75% passing accuracy for Vancouver. Not necessarily an amazing performance, but 3 points is 3 points. And in the famous words of Vin Diesel, you can win by an inch or you can win by a mile, but a win is a win.
The poor fans watching this game. I mean, look, sometimes you can look at a stat box and it won't give you any clue of what this game looked like. I can look at this stat box and I know exactly what this game looked like. Low block, wait, sit, hope, get it up to the big guy. It was successful. Is it going to be successful over 34 games? History suggests not. But as you say, like, you take the 3 points and you move on. And look, from a Canadian perspective, Cavallini scoring again is good news. He had the question. He was, I think, fair to say, before they expanded the roster anyway, it's fair to say some people might have questioned whether he might have stuck with that team.
No,
I don't think it's a question anymore.
Yeah, with 26 players, he will be there. By the way, it's going to be 26 players at the World Cup. Cavallini, Pietro Osorio, in my mind, were the 24, 25, 26. I think they'll make it. Maybe I'm hard on Osorio and Duane is disagreeing, but he'll be there, I believe. Here's your lineup for Vancouver against Dallas in this one. It is a 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1. Cavallini up top, Dahome Caicedo. There's a chemistry that starts to be built up with these players. Tybert long-standing Russell in the midfield with Kubas. Interesting combination. Raposo on the left flank with Godinho on the right flank. A three-man backline of Tristan Blackman, Veselinovic, and Brown, Javane Brown. Cody Cropper in net, doing pretty good for another clean sheet this season. Is this the best version of the Vancouver Whitecaps? Where, yes, you still gotta hope and pray for results, and it ain't pretty, and it ain't about being pretty. But we're seeing the intangibles go in their favor, which was the case last year when they went on the run for the 2/3 of the season. This feels a bit similar to the last couple of games of the Whitecaps. They had good results. Cavallini is delivering 4 goals in his last 4 MLS matches. There's a 5th goal in there too in the Nations League. So Cavallini is doing really well lately. How much of it do you see it being maybe sustainable or not like last year?
The answer to the first question is yes. This is the best version of the Whitecaps in terms of how they need to play to win. I don't think they can win a championship playing like this. That's pretty clear. It would take a considerable mental luck. I mean, Salt Lake City essentially got to the semifinals, got a win away from going to an MLS Cup by playing a similar style. So you can catch lightning in a bottle. That has to be their plan. Do I think that this is sustainable right now? Like, I have questions about that. I don't necessarily see anyone getting as hot as Brian White did last year, and you need that for a team to be successful this way over the course of game in, game out. They're not their talent deficit. They don't have the same talent as other teams around them. They absolutely are a bottom third team in terms of the talent in this league. And if you are that, the only way you can win is to play this style. So yes, it's the way that they need to win. I'm going to give the players credit. This isn't a bash on them when I say that. The players are doing what they can with the talents that they've been given or that they have or they've developed, right? So they're doing what they can. Look, the Whitecaps are frustrating to me. I've been talking about them for 10 years. They're the same damn team year after year after year. They never get better. They never get really worse. They're kind of just the same. It's like, and we focus on them because we're Canadian, but it's hard to come up with original thoughts on them because they're the damn same every year.
They're clearly, in my mind, and no offense to any of these teams, because they're maybe the 2 teams that I love the most in this league. So they're the Canadian San Jose Earthquakes. That's what the Vancouver Whitecaps are. No offense, but to me, they feel a bit like that. But, we're still always going to cover them. They are part of our soccer landscape, and it is always a great time still to talk about the Whitecaps. Good thing, bad thing, it's never boring to talk about the Whitecaps. Like it is never boring to talk about MLS as a whole. But now it's time to talk about our sponsor, Manscaped, for today's episode. Manscaped, of course, it's the worldwide leader in men's grooming. It's been quite an addition to my daily routine, my grooming routine. Of course, as someone who likes to train multiple times a week and play soccer, I have to say I really enjoy the anti-chafing boxers that comes with the Performance Package 4.0. Of course, it comes with the Lawnmower 4.0, the Weed Whacker, which is for your ears, your nose, the ball deodorant, and the ball toner. Great product. But the boxers are amazing when you are using them for sports. They're anti-chafing. They breathe really well, and I really enjoy them. Weed Whacker, like I was talking about, for your nose and for your ears. I'm pushing 40 soon, and this is really useful when you get older, and it's really an addition to my routine. Easy to plug, easy to use, Weed Whacker, but I guess the pièce de résistance of the whole thing is the Lawnmower 4.0. Waterproof, it has an LED light, it is wireless chargeable with the kit that comes with it. You just plug it, forget it, you use it. It has a ceramic protector. It's really useful, and I've been using it in the shower with no mess on the bathroom floor. No mess either when it comes to injuries. It has an anti-nick and cut technology that has been really useful in my daily routine, and you can get that with the code SOCCER today with 20% off and free worldwide shipping at manscaped.com. That is 20% off and free worldwide shipping when you enter the code SOCCER today at manscaped.com. Always use the right tool for the job and unlock your confidence with Manscaped. 20% off manscaped.com with the code SOCCER today. We'll be right back after this short break.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Kevin Laramie with Duane Rollins as we get ready to break down more games in MLS and looking at the standings in Major League Soccer. We'll invite you to subscribe to our YouTube page. And if you'd like to hear more about the Canadian men's national team's road to Qatar, Duane and I have relaunched the world famous Two Solitudes podcast covering the men's national team on our Patreon page, available at patreon.com/2solitudes. Brand new episode breaking down the latest news from the coast to coast. Duane and I will talk about the men's national team Les Rouges on the road to Qatar, and the patrons that have been helping us out in the road to Qatar are here. Pierre, if you're listening, Peter, I hope you had a great F1 weekend. All my friends on this list, glad to see you once again. Let's go, boys. Blue Collar Dan, Sean, soon the school year will be over and you'll be able to breathe. You can do like those great human beings at patreon.com/2solitudes. Duane, you wanted to talk about Seattle, LA. Seattle, LA, the first game this weekend was a 1-1 draw. Albert Rosna got an important goal and Narango got another goal. But to me, it was also an indication and a continuation of the rise of power of Seattle in MLS. What is your thought on this game? And what did you think about the performance of both teams?
Well, I actually thought it was a good indication that LAFC is a much better team than Seattle this year. Seattle held on for dear life, and if it wasn't for a Capro goalkeeping error and Stephen Fryston in his head, LA gets all 3 points in this game. The Sounders are, this is going to sound bitter, it's not meant to be. They're like cockroaches, man. They survive bad games. They're pretty good at what they do. That's the most complimentary thing I could say about a cockroach is they always find a way, right? They find a way to survive. The Sounders do. There was just a lot of chances. Fry made a lot of big saves in this game. LAFC is a damn good team. Now, that said, you could also argue from the Seattle perspective that they, as I said, they find a way. They get the point. And Steph Fry is one of the 11 starters. You know, I think we're sometimes, in all sports, we sometimes look at a game in which the goaltender stood in his head, and we'll look at the 2016 final right now for this example and say, well, they didn't deserve that. The thing is, there's 11 players. It's one of the players, right? So,
he's part of the team. He counts. Yeah. He's one of them. Yeah. Like, you know, yeah. Big save is as important as a goal, but, you know, it's not, it doesn't catches the imagination. Here for our podcast listeners, thank you for watching and listening, and welcome back to our show via podcast. Thank you for making this show a top 100 soccer podcast worldwide. It is a pleasure, and let's make it go higher. Let's bump up that ranking, hit that 5-star review, and click on the download button. 13 shots, 5 on target for Seattle. 52.9% possession, 83% passing accuracy. Another big disparity in the crosses department. That's the name of the game today. And expected goals very similar in this draw. 1-1. Arango for LAFC. LAFC doing well, and I have to say, after a lot of questioning to the front office of LAFC after they named Steve Cherundolo manager, I have to say, I think he's my contender right now. He's my main contender for Coach of the Year, Steve Cherundolo. Because if we go to the standings in the Western Conference, they're doing quite well. And I am quite impressed by how he was able to go from no experience in MLS to having 30 points with LAFC after half season.
Yeah, I think, first off, if the season ended today, he probably would win. There's a lot of narrative there, too, which goes into the vote, right? Like, voters are humans, and they look at the story as much as anything else. And when you come in like he did as a rookie coach and take a team potentially to a supporter shield, which is where they'd be right now, then yeah, you're going to win it. Look, I do think one of the keys to what they've been doing is the style that they're playing is not that much different than what Bob Bradley was playing before. Maybe some tweaks defensively to tighten them up a little bit. I think, you know, it's becoming clear here in Toronto that maybe Bob Bradley's weakness is his ability to stop the holes from breaking out. But
there's a couple of good players that are fast with LA that are in a different spot, that are not exposing Toronto the same way, exposing LA the same way Toronto got exposed, if you're looking at those two. But, you know, he's a smart man, Toronto. Like, look, I'm giving this team, I have a couple of good players. Vela's going to be announced probably soon that he's going to stay. Accordingly, it's all done apparently, but still no confirmation. There's 11 days away from losing Vela at this point. But Cherundolo was like, okay, I got this blueprint. I'm not going to change everything. I'm just going to pick and choose when I want to modify, and I'm going to use this going forward. I'll get all the accolades without necessarily having to rack my brain and complicate things for no reason.
Yeah, well, look, when he was hired, people that there were a lot of people that were negative towards the hire, but the people that were defending the hire said exactly what I just said, that he would represent continuity in terms of what they were doing as a system whole, because he came from LA. They weren't a great team there, but they were trying to develop for LA. Like, they were truly an AHL, NHL kind of setup is what they had developed there. Like, that team was meant to supplement, not necessarily to win. That wasn't the end goal for the Lights. So look, that was the defense going in. His true test is of how good of a manager he will be, I think, will come in years 3, 4, 5, 6. If he lasts that long, not necessarily in the first year when you are still essentially dealing with a team that came from someone else and not making a lot of changes. But he does deserve credit for that. Does deserve credit for holding that room together, for keeping. There's difficulty. Bella, you mentioned that. If he leaves, then he's got a hell of a test there. He's going to have that test come quicker sooner rather than later. So yeah, we'll find out.
And I'm quite surprised, actually, that it hasn't been made more of a big deal, that the Vela situation hasn't really fully been made public, and the last few weeks have been like, it's almost like they're like, don't talk about it too much. But we'll see if it changes. But I think LAFC, to be the team they want to be, they need Vela. And do you think the leverage is in Vela's camp in the next 10 days?
Well, I don't know. That's the bottom line, right? If I'll say this about Vela, he was my MVP pick at the start of the year because I thought he would stand. So I still ultimately believe that Vela will be in LA at the end of this year, because I think that it's important for him to win something there, going out in there. They're well set up to do that.
By the way, he said yesterday that, this is business also. I am open to leaving. So there's 11 days left. And actually, June has 30 days. So there's 30 days left. And we'll see come July 1st or June 30th at midnight if Carlos Vela is wearing black and gold.
Yeah, look, I think there's something to be said with that November World Cup causing that the January transfer window is going to be bigger than it usually is. So that, I think, will factor into a lot of players' choices on how they play the last half of the season. And in Vela's case, he might look at it as that it's not necessarily the worst thing to finish out the contract this year and kind of go into January. But if there's an offer on the table, I mean, these guys have to pay the bills, right? Yeah. And he wants to get back to Spain.
And his contract is up by the end of the month, though, so he might not finish the season.
I mean, fair enough. They could probably extend for 6 months. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's open to leaving now. That's what he's saying. So he might have offers, and he might be on his way out now, which would be an interesting situation. We have looked at the Western Conference. Let's now look at the Eastern Conference standings and see what the results are in the East after this weekend of action. In Major League Soccer, New York City still top of the East. After a 1-1 draw, New York City were facing Colorado in Nick Cushing's first match as manager of NYCFC. The champions of 2021 were able to get a 1 point against Colorado. Colorado saw Marc-Anthony Kaye gets an assist after helping Barrios score a goal, and it was 1-1 this game. We can look at the statistics of this game right now. 16 shots, 4 on target for the champions. Thales Magno scored at the 72nd minute. 66% possession for NYCFC at Yankee Stadium. 86% passing accuracy. A very low 63% passing accuracy for Colorado. Only 33.8% possession for Colorado, but they got a draw at Yankee Stadium 1-1. A 0.3 expected goals for Colorado, 1.3 for NYCFC. Another big disparity in the crosses department. This one was a draw, the point-wise, but Colorado almost got arrested for robbery, for robbing a point at Yankee Stadium at the end of this one. And it was probably because of Marc-Anthony Kaye they were able to get that draw. What is your thought on this draw, Duane, and also maybe more on how do you handle losing your coach, maybe losing your best player, as in Valentin Castellanos, in the next few weeks? We still don't know if the rumors are true that he is being shopped around or he's open to leaving also. It could be more I say turnover, but maybe even more players being able to step up and fill the void in New York. What is your thought?
There's strengths and there's weaknesses to being part of City Football Group, right? And I think the strength is you have the scouting network that you can tap into and find replacements that may fly under the radar sometimes, which if you look at NYCFC's successful signings, that's how you describe them. They're under the radar, but they've been pretty good. That's the pro. The con is that they're part of a system where they are going to turn players out. They are going to look to move players on. They are going to move up and move down, and they're always with an eye to a greater whole rather than the individual win. NYCFC at a boardroom level, the goal isn't to win MLS Cup every year. I don't think the goal is to be part of a productive and successful and healthy system. And if you win at the end of that, great. But it's not necessarily the be all end all. No, at the grass, like at the field level, at the pitch level, the scoreboard level, obviously they're trying to win. But I think there's an overall system they're not. So that's the weakness there. Look, in terms of this game, I mean, that's not replicable. Colorado can't do that every week. They had 0.3. But I think it's not going to happen again. Soccer balls around, right? But anyway.
And we're going to have a conversation about Colorado eventually, too, because they're, after last year's Western Conference regular season win, we thought they were maybe higher than we expected. And this year, they're not delivering. We can look at where they are right now. They're ninth, only 1 point away from Seattle. But I expected them to compete maybe with the top three of the Western Conference, not necessarily compete just for a playoff spot for Colorado, but it's, they don't spend that much money. Even though they spend a bit more now than before, they're still very frugal, and we're seeing the frugal results on the field this year.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I didn't rate them as high as maybe they for to do the same thing they did last year for sure, because what do I always say? Goals win games, right? And they didn't have a scorer, and that's how I usually analyze this. I just like to pat my own back a little bit. Portland I did pick as my wooden spoon, and people thought I was insane, but it's not so insane right now, is it? Anyhow,
no, you're right.
One last thing on this game. You mentioned the crosses, and normally that's a good indication it's a good indication of possession, right? But if you're in that little tin box of a stadium, I don't know whether blasting the ball in from the wings is necessarily the right approach. I think that was a successful defensive effort by Colorado to force crosses, because New York, it's hard to control and get a good curl cross in to get a good goal scoring opportunity in that tiny little stadium.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. But we'll see if also Nick Cushing will be able to get his victory later this week. It's also a U.S. Open Cup week. It's a Canadian Championship week, but it's also a U.S. Open Cup week. That'll be interesting to see going forward how they're able to mix the weekend's game with the week games. There's weekdays game in the U.S. Open Cup and in the Canadian Championship. We'll talk about that on Wednesday's show a little bit. Tomorrow will be the Canadian Premier League dedicated show. We'll review the weekend of action, the standings, and all the latest news in the Canadian Premier League. One more game I want to talk about before we say goodbye for today. Duane, we'll look at the standings once again after. But Nashville, Kansas City, something very rare happened, something that hasn't happened since 592 days. That's a long time. Nashville, its first home defeat since November 4th, 2020. The third longest span in days between home losses in Major League Soccer's history. Nashville got a home defeat, even though Lobas made it a one-goal game but weren't able to get the tying goal later on. Hernandez and Zusi scored for Kansas City after harping on Peter Vermes on Friday, saying this was a must-win for Kansas City. I guess he listened to the show. I guess they reacted and they played well. And Graham Zusi, who else, rescues or gives 3 points to his team. A real Kansas City performance. They didn't want the ball, only 39% possession for them. Crosses, big disparity once again. Expected goals were very low. Some say Kansas City got lucky, but we're looking at a victory nonetheless. 3 points is 3 points, and Peter Vermes can maybe sleep a little easy tonight.
Yeah, I mean, look, they need points. I wouldn't say this is an example of what I said earlier, but dog day stuff. Like these teams right now are setting up for a summer transfer window. The excitement of the start of the season is done. It's just about surviving and getting through to the stretch run now. Not to downplay the games. All 3 points are 3 points, regardless of where they are. Points on the board are points in the pocket. But it is tough to be motivated into highest intensity every game, and I think you see this there. Like, that's not a well played game. This one, it's not at all. I mean, first off, both teams outperform their XG, which tells me there's mistakes. It tells me that there's breakdowns in some kind, or there's brilliant goals. If you're not remembering the brilliant goals, then it means they're probably a sloppy play. That's generally how that works. So look,
It's true.
it's an important win for Kansas City, though, because they need to be in there. No one is really out this year. I'll say this, like, as much as there are teams that are pulling away a little bit, I don't think that there's any team that is truly out to touch like we've seen in a couple of years past. So every team, if they have a good summer window, can feel that they are still in line to get in that top 7 and have a chance to get in the lottery that is the playoffs.
It's true, Duane, and we'll, of course, always continue to keep an eye all season long on the standings, on the battle. 2 wins, you're in the top of the conversation for your conference, and 2 losses, you're out of the playoffs. It's a very tight season. All Canadian teams are still in play. Vancouver is not far away. Montreal's in the thick of it. Toronto's not too far behind. They're behind, but they're not too far behind. And of course, we'll continue to keep an eye on that. You can follow Duane at 24th Minute to keep an eye on his thoughts on the beautiful game, and of course more on Twitter. Myself at Kev Larame, this show at Soccer Today SPN. You can click on the subscribe button of our YouTube page. Soccer Today is available, of course, on YouTube and everywhere else you find your favorite podcasts. That is Google Play Store, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, and everywhere else we're available. Also, if you like to bet on soccer, you can bet on soccer at BETUS, and you can get a 125% deposit bonus when you click on the link in the description below to go and join the website. Also, we would like to thank our sponsor today, Manscaped. You can get 20% off at manscaped.com with the code SOCCERTODAY, and you also get free shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY, worldwide free shipping. Get 20% off also, and you will unlock your confidence and always have the right tools for the job with Manscaped. As always, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kev Larame. We hope you have a beautiful day, and until next time, we wish you a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.